Hello all, and welcome to this informative training session hosted by 123 Industries. Today we're going to be talking about people. Yes, the two-legged animals that roam every corner of this earth and just so happen to be the backbone of every industry across this planet. How people interface with that work environment is what I really wanted to touch on today. Before we get into the meat of the argument, let's give an introduction to the guy who's going to be blabbering at you for the next 7 minutes. My name is Milo Johnson, and I am the Director of Communications here at 123 Industries. And who is that? Well, that's the person who talks to people all the time. It is my job, my profession, and my joy to facilitate conversation across the professional world. So without further ado, let's talk about why we are here. So first things on the docket is we are going to talk about people. Yep, the person whose entire job is to facilitate people talking with one another is going to talk about people. But more specifically, we're going to talk about people's place in the work environment. And what that ultimately means is how people communicate with each other. Businesses, entrepreneurships, industry, all rely on people to facilitate its wheels of motion, and that is facilitated through corporate communication. After we discuss a bit more about how people interact with the workspace through communication, we'll talk about the next steps that are coming to 123 Industries. I want to start this presentation off by asking you to take a look around you. Now, this may be in a metaphorical sense if you're behind a computer screen, but nonetheless, recognize that humans work in teams. It is in our very DNA to work with each other. We're social creatures. We've been doing it since we originated on this earth. But in order for collaboration to generate incredible things, communication must occur. Human connection through communication is a rose of beauty. It is like nothing else we've ever seen on this planet. No other species has generated the ability to speak with each other, but also communicate on virtual or written languages. The unfortunate thorn in our side, though, is that sometimes this communication is difficult. When we're all coming from different backgrounds, time zones, and the option to choose our own breakfast in the morning, it presents a challenge that we're all not on the same page 100% of the time. The difficulties present a communication roadblock, but we have some methods of approach that have proved valuable and effective going into the future. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the number one defining feature of a successful business is a willingness to change and adapt to circumstances and be willing to try something different. Well, my friends, that is exactly what I'm going to ask you to do today when it comes to corporate communications. Let's bring this concept of adaptability in corporate communications to real-world scenarios. Customer relationships are one. We are talking about emails to customers, responding to customer complaints. Social media posts also fall under this interface with the public. And here too, we really want to consider how we present ourselves to the general public. Context is really important here. We're thinking about who, what, when, where, why. All valid questions to consider when we're interfacing with the public outside of 123 Industries. We want to consider our tone or our emotional language, how we say things to the customer, how we come off to the reader. This is very important to consider in our writing with the customer. How we appear to a customer problem is extraordinarily important when it comes to solving their issue. Lastly, we also want to consider the culture. Like I said before, everybody comes from different backgrounds and geological positions, and that can be a real important factor when considering how we approach these conversations. As opposed to external corporate communications like that of customer relations, collaborative documentation projects, or CDPs for short, are an example of internal communications, where employees must discuss amongst themselves how to approach a project or edit it as it continues in its development. Here too, we really want to think about our approach to reader-centered design in writing, that is, making writing accessible to those who are going to read it, especially as multiple folks are going to be viewing this document over time. If you see something, say something. Point it out. Most of the time when we're writing stuff down, we often forget to see the bigger picture or miss something entirely when we're whipping through it multiple times a day. Also, pointing out the good things. If you see something that works well, tell the folks about it. If people can only see what they do wrong, then all they're going to expect in the future is what they're going to do wrong. Letting folks know what they're doing well as opposed to what they can do improvements on allows people to really hone in on improving their writing and seeing what they have done well and what they can move on to focus on. Lastly, we want to think of this as a peer review session. We're not teaching anybody anything, we're not editing, but more we're just seeing things from a different perspective. Continuing on the topic of internal and external communications, emails, the backbone of every industry on this earth. I ask you when approaching these documents in the future to think of a toast. Whether impromptu or planned ahead of time, the speaker really takes the time to consider the context of the situation. Who is it going to? Who's going to be in attendance? Who might be the secondary audience that the friends of the attendees might be told about? These are really important questions to be asking when we're writing down these documents. They could be spread, forwarded, carbon copied, pasted, saved, all very important to consider when we're writing these documents to a person, to a group of people. Just the context is the most important value. Considering that these documents can be carbon copied, spread around, and be sent to multiple folks, read it back aloud. Maybe not so loud that you disrupt all the people in the cubicles around you, but take the time to consider how it comes off as someone reading the document, not just writing it. Getting a second pair of eyes on the document is just as valuable here. Have someone else read it aloud to you. Again, we really want to consider how it comes off to a reader and not just a writer perspective. Formatting is also crucial here. People are busy, and we want to get straight to the heart of the document and what's important to us, or use it as a reference tool for going down the road within a project. So formatting here is really important to make sure that documents come across clear and begin navigated easily by the eyes. Proposals, the persuasive writing of the workspace. And here is probably the most difficult writing to craft, because you're not only telling folks facts based on research and what you're trying to convince them to do, but you're also trying to make it almost like a sales pitch in a sense. And so this ultimately is probably one of the most important documents to really consider how a writing is coming across to a reader. Who is it going to, and who is it coming from? Do you have a good relationship with this person? Have you worked with them in the past? What is their attitudes towards approaching projects? Are they resistive? Are they open to change? These are all really important concepts to consider, especially as you develop a persuasive argument towards your audience. Brevity is sincerity here. We're thinking macro topics. Everybody is busy. We got places to be, and we don't want to sit down and look at a document on every single excruciating detail of the projects that are moving forward. Big topics include how much it's going to cost, who's going to be involved, and how much time is it going to take. Think big topics, and then we'll get down to the nitty-gritty once we start really talking about the project more in depth. Cliches are not your friend. We do not want to sound like a robot. We want to come across as human. We want to sound like we really understand what we're saying here, and we have really researched every possible niche and cranny that could come up in this project. According to a 2019 Harvard study, researchers found that the best way to learn a new skill or improve upon a skill someone already knew was to promote an active learning environment rather than a passive learning environment. This means learning by doing, and instead of listening to a lecture or a series of videos on the topic of improving writing, we are bringing hands-on practical experiences and simulations to 123 Industries to improve professional communications. That means keeping a key eye open for the following elements of improvement coming down the line at 123 Industries. Interactive simulations, largely geared toward customer relations, will soon be available to multiple employees across several departments within the firm. These simulations will allow employees the opportunity to adapt their writing to a specific circumstance when it comes to responding to customer communications. Feedback seminars will soon be hosted every Wednesday at 12 p.m. CST and give employees the opportunity to work in a collaborative peer review environment when it comes to improving their writing. Templates will soon be distributed to managers as well as employees, giving people the chance to see how formal communications were done in the past that provided effective results when it came to accomplishing their goals. Integrated AI is coming to the workplace. Across several softwares and programs already in use within the firm, AI will soon be implemented within the software, allowing people the chance to approach a problem creatively and see how the AI may respond to a specific situation, giving folks an idea of how to go about responding in their own way. Bounce board positions are going to open up in our communications department. If you want to add to your resume a willingness to improve professional communications as well as professional demeanor as a whole within the firm, I encourage you to look at this opportunity and see what it entails as it applies to your specific department. But why, you might ask, is it valuable to spend this much time, resources, and energy when it comes to improving our communications? Well, here's the thing. People make the world spin. Bottom line, people equal success. We look at the effects of the 2019 and 2020 COVID-19 pandemic and how that affected the economic locomotion of the world because people were not connected with one another. No longer could people come into the workspace and work on problems in person. We had to make everything virtual, and that presented a lot of challenges when it came to communication. Because of this lack of communication, economic problems started to arise. Everything in our world is guided by how people talk to one another and people doing things. If that comes to a stop, economics come to a stop. It's a neurological superpower that humans have developed the ability to talk with one another about larger issues, come together as a team, and solve those problems. People are powerful. Communication is how we make big change in industry. Just before we head out the doors to being communication experts, let's go over the bullet points of today's presentation. If nothing else, people are the backbone of the workplace. Everything in industry comes from the communication of people working together, and we should keep that in mind when approaching our corporate communications. We also want to keep a mind open for those developments coming down the line, those interactive simulations of customer relations, the feedback seminars of collaborative peer review environments, the templates which will be distributed to managers and employees to see how corporate communications have been handled in the past, integrated AI coming across several softwares, open positions in the communication department, as well as other improvements that can be found at our website at www.123industries/communications. Lastly, I ask you please to approach communications as well as life in general with adaptability. If we choose to approach our problems not with fear but with curiosity, we can make some very interesting changes as we approach our new world around us. Thank you for your time today. Now, communication is not a one-way street. And with that, for the next several minutes, I'd like to open the floor to questions and answers. Anything that has come about during our presentation that you'd like to ask me about or ask any of my colleagues, I open the floor and welcome that open communication.